Hello everybody and welcome along to a brand new video where, well, it's a bit of a different video today because you can't see my face for the very first time. That may be a good thing, you may think that's a bit of an improvement, but I thought I'd try doing something different for this video. I'd try using a brand new microphone that I've got, the microphone that's very much set up more for sort of voiceover and narration rather than sort of for going with a camera and doing filming with, and so realistically this is more of a microphone for audio only than being able to combine it with my camera as well. So I thought, why not, I'll give it a go for this video, see what it's like, see what you guys think about it. I'd love for you guys to tell me what you think about this style of doing it, whether you're enjoying it, whether you like this style, whether you prefer to be able to see me even if the audio quality is not so good, or if it's more about the audio quality, you almost want a sort of podcast style video from me in this format, which I could even potentially create sort of downloads if you guys wanted to sort of download a longer video and listen to it, sort of just an MP3 of it rather than having to sit and watch it on YouTube or something like that. I could potentially do that if that's what you guys sort of think is a good idea. So I'd really just love your guys' input really on what you think is the best way forward. But certainly for this video, it's what I'm going to give a go at doing. So yes, do give me some thoughts in the comments below as to whether you like this style of video, or more audio-based video, shall we say, or whether you do prefer the more, you want to actually see me, you want to see what I look like, because obviously I'm so attractive, you know, like that's obviously the case. But yeah, do let me know down in the comments below if this is what you prefer or not. But now that we've got rid of all the faffing about on microphones and whatnot, let's get into the actual video, where today I'm talking about Doctor Who Series 2, one of the, I think, the most famous and most iconic series of Doctor Who, really. It's kind of where Doctor Who became even more mainstream popular than it has done up until sort of in Series 1. Obviously, Series 1 did do a massive amount to make the show a sort of great hit again. It launched the show, it brought it back. But I think Series 2 and the introduction of David Tennant is where the show really properly kicked off, and the whole David Tennant-Rose relationship, or the Doctor Rose relationship with David Tennant and Billie Piper, I think that sort of really paved the way for the kind of the peak years of Doctor Who, I think you'd call it. So yes, as I've been doing with these videos, both in the Stephen Moffat era and then in the RTD era that I'm now doing as well, I'm going to kind of have a brief look over each of the episodes and also the sort of storylines of the series, and just having a look, now that we're, well, nearly 13 years on from when this series originally aired, just thinking about what worked and what didn't with it, whether it was a success ultimately as a series of Doctor Who. So yes, of course, Series 1 ended on the regeneration of Christopher Eccleston into David Tennant, which I think was a reasonable shock at the time. It was not completely... well, now you look at it and it seems sort of it's pretty uncommon for an actor to only do one series playing the Doctor, so to choose to do that for the relaunch of the programme, I think is quite interesting. And so it was obviously a bit of a sort of almost a restart, a risk all over again, introducing a new Doctor. David Tennant, if it didn't work, the show was going to be dead in 2 years, because Christopher Eccleston had become the Doctor for children, for a brand new generation of children across the world, well, mainly the UK to start off with, but across the world ultimately. And so to take that away straight away after a single series, it's sort of it was a big risk to be taking, introducing David Tennant to the programme, because at the time he wasn't a very well known and well established actor. He wasn't sort of nobody, but he wasn't known in the same way that he is now. Of course, he's got massive worldwide appeal. And then I think it's also really interesting that they took, well, Russell chose to, in the Christmas Invasion, actually write so little of the Doctor in the story. He spends 40 minutes lying in his bed, sort of knocked out, having a snap and not being very helpful. And it's quite a sort of a bold and a risky strategy to really take in a Doctor's opening story, where it almost feels like only the last 15 minutes are really introducing this brand new Doctor. And yet I still think it works brilliantly as an introduction, because he turns up when he needs to, at the last moment, when he needs to come and save the day from the Sycorax, or giving a little sort of hint at what it's like when the Doctor isn't there, which is then explored in Turn Left in Series 4 as well. I think is quite always an interesting idea to explore, of what they do when they're on their own against the aliens. And then when he does have his sort of crowning moment as he comes out of the TARDIS saying he's the Doctor and fighting the Sycorax and everything, I think it's all really, really good. I think the only thing is that it doesn't kind of fit with how his character develops. He talks about he's a man he's a no second chances kind of guy. He's like, I'll give you one chance and that's it. But we kind of see through all of the coming series that that's not really the case. So it was kind of almost a nice line to intro him with this isn't, he's still a serious Doctor. He's not all suddenly all nice and friendly, when he kind of turns that way a little bit later in the era. But in that first episode, I think it works well in the episode, but then when you look at it in the context of what's to come, it's a little bit of a nothing statement that doesn't really sort of live itself out in the actual episodes. Of course, that episode was all about new things. It was the first ever proper official Doctor Who Christmas special that was specifically written to air on Christmas Day, to be a Christmas special. Yes, there was Feast of Stephen in 1965, but it's not in the same way to what we have now. And so Russell sort of had that challenge to start off with, and then introducing a new Doctor into that episode as well must have been a real challenge to be able to kind of put all those elements together to make a great story and a great Doctor introductory story. So definitely the odds were against him. And of course, that's something we've seen has never happened since then. We've always had a Doctor's first story being the start of a series, not trying to do it on a Christmas special. Chris Chibnall particularly didn't want to do it on a Christmas special, hence why Peter Capaldi stayed through and Stephen Moffat stayed through till to do the Christmas special Twice Upon a Time. Otherwise, that I don't think would have happened if Chris had been willing to write a Christmas special introductory story, because it's, I think, potentially not that great an idea, because you are constrained to what is required from a Christmas special. Had to be all very jolly happy, there's lots of Christmassy elements to it and everything like that, and that can be a real sort of challenge with introducing a new Doctor as well. So I think that's where Russell really hit the nail on the head in creating a brilliant introductory story for the 10th Doctor. Series 2 follows the same pattern of Series 1 in the idea of a sort of having the first 3 episodes are where they go to, in whatever order, going to the past, to the future, and to an alien planet, and they cover all 3 of those in the first 3 episodes. I think they do that in pretty much every series up to Series 5 or 6. Certainly in every single one of Russell's series, because of course Episode 1, it's a different planet in the future, then we go to the past in Tooth and Claw, and then we come to the present in School Reunion Episode 3. So it's nice to kind of have that. We're going to cover off everybody's favourite stories right at the beginning of the series, whether you prefer your futuristic alien spaceships one, you prefer your historical one, you prefer your present day contemporary one. You get that straight really early on in the first couple of weeks. You're getting that. I think that's a really brilliant way to do Doctor Who. Of course, it was essentially done again in Series 11 as well, having the Woman Who Fell to Earth set in the present, then going to an alien planet in the future in Ghost Monument, and then back to the past in Rosa. So I think it is, for Doctor Who in particular as a show, it's just a very effective framework to start a series off with. And I think, although in my opinion none of those first 3 episodes are all-time classics, particularly New Earth is not, like, it's hardly my favourite of the opening episodes. It's probably one of my least favourite sort of series openers, because it's just a bit of a, doesn't feel like there's any particular stakes. It's just a kind of light-hearted comedic episode. Yes, there's some dark ideas in there, but it doesn't feel like the big season openers, which is what I really enjoy, that we get a lot more from in the Moffat era. That ultimately Russell was much more about just a kind of nice, easy to enjoy, get into opener to engage people, rather than the big blockbuster, almost finale style openers that Stephen Moffat did in particularly a couple of his series. So I sort of have mixed feelings on it for that reason, but I think it's ultimately an enjoyable story. It's just, and does well to establish the Doctor-Rose relationship straight away. Obviously, we see it briefly at the end of the Christmas Invasion, but then that's very sort of majorly carried on into New Earth. Although it's not technically Rose, we see them snogging and everything, and it just kind of sets the wheels in motion, shall we say, for building up that relationship over the series to then hit its head in Doomsday. So I think that's quite a good aspect to it, and it does work well in that regard. And then Tooth and Claw, the second episode as well, is another kind of, it's not that fun, it's quite dark, because you've got werewolves and exploring all that kind of thing, but also some quite sort of interesting ideas introducing Queen Victoria into Doctor Who, and the whole that she's potentially a werewolf as well is just quite a fun idea to have in there, among other things. And again, establishing the Doctor and Rosa relationship, sort of continuing through there, is I think done really effectively. Then of course a fan favourite episode in episode 3, School Reunion, reintroducing Sarah Jane Smith as a character in Doctor Who again, having not seen her. Well, we saw her in the Five Doctors, but not having really travelled with the Doctor since 1975, I believe, 1976 possibly. And I think it is a very, very strong episode. It's such a, I'm sure, obviously for me at the time, I wasn't really a Classic Who fan. I obviously hadn't grown up with Classic Who, but I imagine for fans who had sort of watched Sarah Jane in their youth, to then be able to see her on screen again 40 years later or 30 years later must have been such an amazing sort of compelling feeling, and really bringing back the nostalgia, which must have been so great for that in that regard. So I think even just as an episode generally, it's really, really effective. It really sort of helps develop the character of the Doctor at the time as well, and sort of and having some quite sort of honest and kind of Rose sort of realising some quite sad facts that no matter what happens, he will outlive her. that's quite a difficult thing for her to take. Sort of, I think, making more real the idea that he's had people before her, because of course she hasn't met any of them, so you almost don't think about it. But then when he suddenly comes across one who seemingly almost loves him as much as Rose does, I love those scenes where they're sort of in competition is brilliant, and then them obviously coming together and just laughing away at the Doctor for his funny quirks is sort of a really brilliant sort of just dynamics between the characters, and creates such an enjoyable episode, I think, overall. But it does, just add some really interesting aspects to the series, and to Sarah Jane's character as well, where she kind of realizes that actually she doesn't want to travel with the Doctor again. She spent years thinking about sort of feeling sad and feeling annoyed at him and feeling like she did want to do it, but then when actually offered it and experiencing an adventure again, she realizes that she's got her own life now. This isn't what she wants anymore. And I think that sort of really just 30 years later, bringing a character full circle is just such clever Doctor Who that they're able to do that. So I thought Scorini in particular is a great episode. I'm sensing this is going to become quite a long video, so I'll try and rattle through some of these episodes reasonably quickly. The Girl in the Fireplace, for me, Stephen Moffat's second story for Doctor Who after writing The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances in Series 1, I personally think is a phenomenal story. It's got all the tropes of the Moffat era. You go back and watch it, it's completely Moffat dialogue. Like, I almost don't realise it until I'm doing an RTD era rewatch and then seeing the Moffat episodes within the RTD era to realise how sort of iconic and specific the dialogue for the Doctor in particular that Stephen Moffat writes is like, because it just feels a completely different thing to everything else you get in an RTD series when it has a Stephen Moffat episode. It's just different. It's just a different way of doing things, introducing all these sort of timey-wimey elements that we get in future episodes of Stephen and his whole era in the future as well. And I just think it creates such a brilliant episode, such a sad episode with the ending as well, with Renette dying and the Doctor not getting to see her again because of the sort of getting confused with the way it works and everything like that. I think is just... it's such an effective way of portraying these changes in time, and just creates such a heart-warming and then heartbreaking story as well, where it almost feels like the Doctor's falling in love. So again, to Rose's jealousy for a second episode in a row almost there, where somebody else seems to be coming along to try and sweep up the Doctor. Which is just quite interesting, that sort of that dynamic that's played out during those few episodes of the series. But yeah, The Girl in the Fireplace is a brilliant story. Then we have the latest genesis of the Cybermen style story in Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel, the two-parter, which establishes the whole idea of parallel worlds, which is then brilliantly brought up again in the finale. Again, an idea that Russell used in Series 1 with the establishing Satellite 5 in the long game and then bringing it back for the finale. He's done this again. Obviously, it's someone else writing these stories in Tom McRae, but still doing a good job of just sowing the seed for a parallel universe. Mickey gets a big story here as well, having travelled with the Doctor and Rose for the last couple of episodes. Then really he gets to properly establish himself as his own character. We really see a bit more fight, I think, for the first time from Mickey, and realise we realise that he's not just the tin dog. He's not just there to sort of be bossed around by the Doctor and Rose. He is actually that strong man who wants to go and lead the rebellion against the Cybermen in this parallel universe. It's such brilliantly developed on that side of things. I think the Cybermen's reintroduction it's good. I think as an overall story, it's not the most brilliant one. I do remember really, really enjoying it when I was a kid. It was sort of just really exciting. I remember seeing these Cybermen creatures that I kind of had heard a bit about from the classic series, and then seeing them in the new show, their massive metal outfits. The Cybermen always used to be my favourite monster as a child as well, and it was sort of so I do remember have very fond memories of it, but even I can kind of look at it now and say, no, it's not the greatest story. Although the parallel universe idea is a good idea, I think sort of a lot of fans would have preferred a more normal sort of Genesis of the Cybermen style story, really establishing the original Cybermen. But it does show the whole concept of there can be so many different factions of Cybermen, that the Cybermen can develop and be grown from anywhere. Even if it does cause lots of issues with canon and different versions and everything, which gets very, very complicated at various different times. But I think it feels like an episode with a bit of a too easy resolution, where it's just Mickey bashing some keys sticking it into a phone, and boom, they all blow up and their heads blow off. It's sort of, although it's quite a good sort of idea, bringing in their emotional limiters being taken away, it still feels a little bit too easy to be resolved, I think, to a degree. So yeah, overall, the Cybermen two-parter is not my favourite story of the series, but I do think it sort of it does have its good parts of it, particularly Mickey. The Cybermen themselves are quite good. I think I prefer them to the almost Iron Man style Cybermen we get later on in New Who. I prefer these style where they're a bit more, they feel a bit more like the classic Cybermen to a degree, I think, which is really, really good. And as I said, establishing the parallel universe idea is brilliant for the future as well. So yeah, a solid story, I would say. Then The Idiot's Lantern, which I don't really have much to say. It's a Mark Gatiss story. It's not very good. It doesn't really do anything for me. I mean, I've never been that much of a fan of historical stories anyway, as I've mentioned before on my channel, but this one in particular just doesn't really do anything for me. It's just not that great. There's a couple of good moments with the Doctor and Rose, but other than that, there's really nothing much memorable about it at all. It just feels like your stereotypical Mark Gatiss historical, not particularly inspiring, and just a solid mid-series episode, really. So really not anything to say about it. After that, we have the brilliant two-part of The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit, written by Matt Jones, which I think is definitely one of the highlights of Series 2. It's a very, very dark story, obviously a very dark subject matter, focusing on the devil and Satan and demon possession and all these sort of very dark and adult topics, I think, for a lot of people, and having, as if you've been watching my Megan reaction videos that I've been doing, sort of watch it as we talked about, watching that story sort of now, you look at it and think, how on earth did they get away with that when that was sort of being seen by 5, 6, 7-year-old children? Like, it's some pretty risky, bold, dark stuff to be going down. And I remember at the time I wasn't allowed to watch the second part. My parents watched it first and then deleted it. I wasn't allowed to watch it, or delete it from the recorder or whatever. I wasn't allowed to watch it because they considered it to be too dark and scary, and the subject matter and everything just wasn't suitable for me at 8 years old at that time. And so I think now, sort of looking at it from a more adult perspective, I think there's so many brilliant concepts in there. The Ood are a brilliant idea anyway, and well, the idea of a slave race, but one that sort of is just purpose is to serve. They haven't been enslaved. Their purpose is to serve. At least that's what we see in this story. And then them being able to be infiltrated by the devil and being taken over, and just a lot of sort of, I think, mystery and ambiguity about the devil, and just throwing in a few ideas and hints about sort of Satan and things like that, and just not wanting to, I don't think they're trying to be too sort of preachy and too, this is what I think is right and wrong, and this is what I think is real and not, and whatever. So I think it takes a reasonably balanced sort of view, but obviously introducing a Satan, and whether that's kind of the real Satan is open to interpretation, I guess, a little bit in this story. But it does create a really effective sort of conclusion, I think, to the story, particularly when the Doctor that sort of just drops into that chasm of complete blackness, and he lets his harness go and just falls. And it's such a sort of a defining moment. The Doctor's accepting that could be it. He could die, but he's going to die down here anyway, so he's willing to do it. That he's already lost Rose, that's all gone. It's such... There's just so many great scenes throughout this story. A classic base under siege Doctor Who story, where it really feels like the odds are so massively against them as well, I think. And then seeing the Doctor and Rose's reunion right at the end of the story in the TARDIS is such a... You can just see that pure joy that they both have. And of course, interestingly, that scene in the TARDIS of them hugging, I believe, was the final scene they ever shot, or they shot for Series 2. That was the conclusion. So that was actually a very, very difficult scene to film, because of course it's quite a happy scene. It's a massive hug and smile and everything, and like doing that on their last day of filming together was really, really difficult. So it's sort of a testament to them that they managed to kind of hold it together and do a good job in that situation. And of course, just a little hint about the valiant child who will die in battle so very soon, and it's just the classic ominous foreshadowing that we get in this story. But I think, yeah, overall, a brilliant, brilliant two-parter, and probably one of the highlights of the series. Then next up, Love and Monsters, the episode 10 of the series, probably one of the most divisive Doctor Who stories there has ever been. For me, I am, to be honest, reasonably on the fence, in that I don't hate it, but I also don't love it. I see that it's not that good an episode personally, but I don't sort of actively hate it either. I'm not one of those fans who's like, I'm going to defend Love Monsters to the hills. It's the most amazing episode ever. It's not. It has some good ideas in there, but there's also a lot of bad ones. The Absorbaloff as a monster is not the best. The inappropriate jokes are interesting. And just the plot itself, of course, it's a Doctor-like story, which works in Series 3 with Blink, but I don't think particularly works here, and just is not the sort of story that really I'd go back and watch again, apart from in an overall rewatch. And then following that, another really quite disappointing story in Fear Her by Matthew Graham. It doesn't do anything for me. It's just really, really poor as a story. I think it just... The whole idea of the scribble monsters and stuff, and Chloe that can draw stuff and then that makes him disappear. It feels quite childish, I think, for Doctor Who almost. Of course, it is. There are some somewhat darker moments with the dad in the cupboard and things like that. But overall, it does very much feel like a filler episode. It very much feels like can we just skip to the finale now, please, kind of episode. Because ultimately, there's just nothing much to say about it as an episode, which I think is the most damning thing about it. That there is nothing new to say. That it is just an episode that happened and was not very good. Simple as that, really. And then, of course, you get to the finale two-parter, Army of Ghosts and Doomsday by RTD, which I think is, as a story, it is good. I don't think it's RTD's strongest finale. I think the emotional impact of it and the nostalgic element now of it as well kind of elevates it higher than maybe it should be in terms of pure story. That, of course, it's kind of every fan's dream with Daleks versus Cybermen, them both being thrown into the greatest sort of shootout in the world. And then just the whole sort of drama between Rose and the Doctor, and Rose sort of being sucked into the void almost, and then trapped in the parallel world. Of course, it's amazing, incredible, heartbreaking, emotional. I can't deny it. So I love it as a story, and I still have massive nostalgia for it, and that I still really enjoy, and feel sad as well watching it when you get to the end of Doomsday as well. Just looking at things like the cliffhanger of Army of Ghosts when the Daleks come out when you're not expecting it. I'm pretty sure it was spoiled at the time, but it's still a great cliffhanger. And introducing Torchwood and explaining where that's all come from and everything as well, and introducing that into the story. It just feels like it's a classic RTD finale where he's just thrown everything in the kitchen sink at it to try and make it the most big, epic finale that he possibly can. And I think it works pretty effectively, and is the absolute head of the Doctor-Rose sort of relationship up to this point between the 10th Doctor and Rose, when they have to say goodbye to each other, and the pure raw emotion that you can see there on that beach is just so heartbreaking, and something that we haven't seen a lot of sort of more recently in Doctor Who, only in sort of specific moments, I think. And it's just one of the most iconic scenes, I think, in Doctor Who history, that moment on the beach between the Doctor and Rose, that I don't think many moments will ever top that, just for the pure emotion, the national sort of heartbreak for all the fans, the 8, 9, 10 million people watching that episode, when it was getting to such a high level of cultural sort of awareness and excitement and enjoyment at that point. And just because the way Russell was writing it is more of a almost soap opera drama than a sci-fi, and it worked. It so perfectly worked for what they were trying to do with it, which is just, I think, incredible. And so, yes, it creates a brilliant finale and really does kind of tie up the series really, really well and leave it absolutely on a heartbreaking conclusion. I think Series 2 is one of those series where, looking at it as a whole, or sort of more looking at it as individual episodes, it isn't actually that great. When you look at it, it's got Fear Her, which is terrible. It's got Love and Monsters, which isn't very good. It's got The Idiot's Lantern, which also isn't very good. New Earth and Tooth and Claw are okay. Rise of Cybermen, Age of Steel are okay. The good ones, Girl in the Fireplace, Impossible Planet, Satan Pits, optimistically Army of Ghosts and Doomsday as well. There's sort of, I don't think there's that many brilliant episodes in this series compared to a lot of the other series, so I would probably put it lower down in my sort of ranking of New Who series. I think nostalgia brings it back up a little bit. I think for all fans who watched it at the time and are still fans now, that there's always going to be an element of nostalgia, which is kind of that just intangible factor that makes it more warmly accepted in your heart than, say, Series 11 is, or Series 10 or whatever. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it just makes it so hard to kind of subjectively rate it against other more recent series when there's that aspect added into it, and looking at it purely as the quality of the story, but then quality subjective as well. So it's sort of a discussion you could have all day, really, I think, about how good a series it is. But I think Series 2 is a sort of, looking at it as a whole package from the outside, you kind of think it's memorable. It's the David Tennant's first series. It's got the whole Doomsday stuff at the end of it, the introduction of the Cybermen. You think of the Devil in there. You think of throwing Sarah Jane in there as well, and all these kind of things. I think it's sort of, when imagining it as a package, it's a brilliant series, but you can kind of nail down the individual episodes. There's some weaker spots to it. It's not that great in some places. So I think overall it is an enjoyable series. It's definitely the series, it was definitely the right series at the time. It completely played into what the audience wanted from Doctor Who at the time, of that soap opera drama style that just kept building the audience really through Series 2, 3 and 4 into the specials and even into Series 5 a bit as well. It just was exactly the right Doctor Who for the right time, which I think is what makes it a brilliant series. And so yes, overall, it is a series that I enjoy. I would probably put it behind Series 1, but not that far away as a whole package. But what about you guys? What do you think about Doctor Who Series 2? Is it one of your more highly rated series? Do you think it's overrated maybe as a series and actually you're not so much of a fan of it? What are your favourite and least favourite episodes? Are you the staunchest Fear Her fan there's ever been? Or do you actually hate Doomsday and you're like one person who hates Doomsday or something like that? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below about Doctor Who Series 2. But that's just about it from this video. I hope you have enjoyed a slightly different style video, doing a audio only rather than any visuals. As I say, please give me some feedback in the comments below of whether you prefer this style or prefer the video sort of seeing me visually as well. Or if I can improve the audio style as well to make it better, whether sort of introducing more pictures on screen or things like that. I'd just love to get your guys' input so that I can keep making better and better videos for you all. But other than that, you guys do remember to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you again very soon for another one. Goodbye.